Hello again. I'm back with the 3 different stockings that I'm progressing on. So I thought I'd show you where I've got to. So this is the stocking I've done with rabbits at the base, which has tiny little rabbit's ears sticking up there. And I've done lots of long and short on the holly leaves. So that's rather like our Crewel company logo. So I've used that as inspiration. And again, using up my stash. I've actually scribbled down the side all the colours just in case I want to make this into a kit, because you know, lots of people have asked. I'm sorry, but Bella is being rather itchy scratchy today. But shut up. If you're going to join us, you've got to pretend to be a cushion, okay? Right, okay, so that's that one. And yes, I've done the clouds and the laden couch work and the long and short soft shading. And if this ever is a kit, we'll actually draw all the lines in for the first colour. Or if you've done Crewel work before, you might like to do something like that. And I've got a child in mind for that one. And then I'm going to show you how to stitch the lower area of the horse. Now, I've drawn in the long and short soft shading on the pattern that you've got, but I'm assuming that you didn't draw those in when you drew out the design onto the linen. So I'm going to show you one where I haven't filled in the shape. So on this one, I haven't drawn any lines, and I haven't drawn any of the laden couch work, the squares into here. And my intention here is to actually use some colours for some sort of dappling. So I thought that we could use, I've got some greys here, and I might make this into a dapple grey, and that will look very like the Appleby Vanner horses that come every year when the travellers come. So on this one, it's outlined in a very fine single thread, and then I've just used a single thread, and I've gone around the edge with very small Crewel stem or Crewel outline stitches. So it's the same, exactly the same stitch as you used for going down these stems and for the top of the stocking. So if you want to go back to that video, you'll see. And I've just worked all the way down, going round the corners, and then when you actually go round this corner, you would flip your loop to the outside of the curve here, and then go down straight, and then flip your loop to the other side, or just make your stitches very small. And then I made a few satin stitches for the unicorn, his actual horn, and then for his ear or her, and then the same Crewel outline stitch. Sorry, Bella, stop it. We're going to have to ban you in future. To make the mane. Now, I just worked all the way down and then all the way back again. I didn't carry the thread across the back. So,
is there any particular reason why you haven't finished on outlining at the bottom?
Well, I just haven't finished anything. Well, actually, I worked way down there and then worked up here, and then I realised that my rules say that you have to work the background before the foreground, and I'd forgotten. So I thought I'd better work this leg and then this belly really next. So I didn't want to go along the belly and then have to do the background, because yeah, I'd already broken all the rules. But I'm going to forgive myself today, because you know, we're all busy. Even doing nothing is quite busy. And then I've decorated with very random snowflakes on the base, and working just over the top of the odd leaf here. And that actually is really much more challenging than you think, because you know, it's rather like decorating planting bulbs. It's so easy to get everything to be uniform, but actually to not be uniform is very hard. So I've tended to go towards the laden couch work where it crosses, but you really don't need to do that. You can break free of that. So I'm going to now take you to the next one, stocking number 3, and this one is the one actually I've enjoyed the most, to be honest, because I changed colours all the way down. I put a bit of green into the clouds, which I really like. I changed colours on the leaves. I got a bit more adventurous. The unicorn, I've actually gone over it again and again and again in satin stitch, working up and down, and then wrapped it on the diagonal with another satin stitch. And that was great fun. Then I used the Crewel stem stitch for the mane, and I went a bit crazy, which was good fun as well. And then I started with the stitch I'm going to show you on the video right now. So now I've stitched the rump from the middle, that was the first stitch here, out to the right hand side, returned back to the middle, went all the way along to his top of his shoulder, his withers, and then I went to the middle of the neck, worked down, and then went to the top and worked down, or you can work up. I've personally always found it easier working down, but dividing this whole area of the first colour into sections keeps the direction of the stitch and it keeps you happy. I've also put in the face, the top of his face, and I've actually avoided covering his eye because it's really, really difficult. Eyes are so important, and I really want this to be the most beautiful eye in the end. So now I've run out of the white colour. So you know, that happens, or your first colour runs out. And I have a few choices. I have got some greys because those are from the Medicine Parrots, if anybody has done that, or the Medicine Fire Screen. So those are from grey parrots. So I'm now going to change to using a cream, which is also in that one, and the greys. So my next colour, if you look at this colour story of the pale, slightly deeper and the deepest, I'm going to have quite a lovely time shading down through the cream colour, and that should give his body a little bit of shape. So I can move that one out the way and go back to the where the original stitch was, pretty well at the highest point of his back, I think it was. I think it was, Richard. And then you come up through that colour, just as you did with the hummocks and everything else you've done with the shading. So take that and then just lay that down with your finger to get the correct angle. So it's the same angle exactly as the first layer of colour, and then just take that down. Now this second colour, the first stitch of the second colour, should be as long or longer than the first stitch of the first colour. So the first stitch of the white, say that was 1 inch long, this second colour in the cream would be about 1 inch long or even longer, but not beyond, obviously, the drawing of his, that's actually called the stifle, isn't it? Sad, Richard, that I know the parts of a horse, but my training was originally with horses, so there you go. So that was my long stitch, and then here's my shorter at both ends stitch. So that's my coming up about 1/4 of the way down the first stitch and ending up 1/4 of the way above it. So long and short at both ends. Then again, long. Now, every time I do a long stitch, I just lay that down and hold it down with my finger like that, and then pop the thread in. Now, of course, on this unicorn, I had to cover it because I'd drawn all the, I got rather enthusiastic and I drew all the lines for the laden couch work because I thought, oh, I'm bound to cover it. But actually, I wasn't bound to cover it because by the time you get down here, you might be sick of doing it and might want to finish it quickly. And the quickest way is the other method I showed, which was to outline it and then decorate it with little stitches. And when I'm making these, particularly when I'm replicating historic pieces, I often think, you know, this was the actual attitude behind it. I've just reached the last stitch down this side in the second colour. So I'm here, if you can just see that. I don't know if that's very clear, Richard. Maybe I'll just draw it in a little bit more for you. See, that's his hock. I'm going through the parts of the horse again. Down his cannon bone. So this area here is his hock, which is kind of the ankle bone, strangely enough. That's his foot, if it was a human. This is his knee, and that's his hip. There you go. But this area here, I'm going to work that in a double thread with on a slanted satin stitch, and I'm going to work that later. So the long and short area that's rather glamorous, I've worked all the way down to here, and now I'm going to just carry my thread across to the back. Now, when you carry it more than 1 inch like that, it's always a good idea to just end off with just a little tiny seeding stitch. So my last stitch came up here and down there. I'm just tying that, keeping the tension by putting a little seeding stitch in, and then I'm going to carry my thread all the way across the back of here, put another little seeding stitch in. This is just a little Phillipa handy hint here, and that will mean that when I begin coming across here, there's not a whole lot of flappy thread at the back which could get caught. So, or if it gets caught, it could unravel a bit. Okay, so I'm going to start with a shorter at both ends stitch and then carry on with a long and short. And do you see how deeply I go quite high up into this first colour? And you might think, gosh, that's wasting all that colour, but it isn't, because when you actually lay it down, you see that disappears, the second colour disappears and mixes with the white in quite a pleasing way. So I'm just going to then take it down and just see, well, that's actually not quite near enough, the last colour, so I'm going to pop that in. I never waste an action. And then I'm just going to put another one in there. You can always go back in Crewel work and fill in, and if it looks very shadowy in between the stitches, it's usually because your stitches are a little bit too sparse, but that's fine. Just get the base coat in and you can always go back and make a fuss later with the detail. Now, of course, ideally you would work the background before the foreground, so I'm going to just work this second colour all the way up here because it doesn't overlap with anything, but when I work the third colour, I would be actually covering the top of this hind leg here. So in fact, I can work all the second colour, but then I need to stop and work this leg and this leg before I go on any further with the shading down here. So I'm going to continue this and I'm going to work from here to here. Do you remember we stopped there with the white? And then I'm going to start up here and work down to join this area, and then I'm either going to go from there up to his jawbone or from the jawbone and down, and then I'll do his face. So I'll take some pictures so that you can see my progress.